Casas. Hello, Elena. What have you got to start off with?
Hello again, Claire. Shock testimony over balladeur's money. That's Le Parisien's headline today. Now, this is about a scandal that's been going on in France for some time over what's called Karachi Gate. That, essentially, is where 10 million francs in cash that found their way into Edouard Balladeur's campaign accounts when he was running for the presidency in 1995 came from. There's a judicial inquiry going on to find out if rumours that they came from kickbacks to arms sales to Pakistan are true, and if so, if the cancellation of those kickbacks could have been at the root of a bomb attack that killed 8 French engineers in Karachi in 2002. So it's one of these complicated stories, but what's new about it today is that Le Parisien has interviewed a Constitutional Court judge who was sitting at the time of that election. Now, the Constitutional Court judges decide if a presidential candidate's expenses are dodgy or not, and he says that they basically, what he calls launders the money, that's the word he uses. They fiddled with the balance sheet to try and hide where that 10 million francs had come from because the candidate couldn't explain it, and the only alternative the judges would have had would have been to cancel the election, he says, which, a couple of months beforehand could have been chaotic and disastrous. They also say that Jacques Chirac, who was taking on Edouard Balladur in that election, who of course won, also had large amounts of dodgy money in his campaign accounts.
Wow, cancelling the election, yes, that was quite a difficult alternative. So, talking of campaign finance, though, moving on to Libération, it's not happy about the way Nicolas Sarkozy is spending public funds.
No, the candidate with the expenses of a princess is their headline today. Now, this is an ongoing controversy in France, which is the fact that Sarkozy himself hasn't declared he's going to be a candidate for the next presidential election yet. Now, Libération says that's allowing him to misuse public money because he's going around the country doing big speeches like one he's meant to be doing later today in Toulon in the south of France about the euro, and they say that this should be paid for using the UMP party's money because it's his campaigning, but actually he's using public money. They reckon that that's a misuse of funds, and that the longer Sarkozy doesn't announce that he's a candidate, the more public funds he'll manage to misspend.
Now, one man who we know will be running in the election next year is François Hollande. He's the candidate for the Socialist Party, and his response to the euro crisis is also making front pages.
Yes, the Socialist Party declares war on Germany is the title of Le Figaro's editorial today. Now, this is about a speech that Hollande made yesterday about the idea of France and Germany consolidating their fiscal and budgetary policy to try and stave off a collapse of the euro. Now, he said he's not in favour of that France shouldn't give up its sovereignty, that it would be undemocratic. But Le Figaro says that this is just the natural conclusion that the euro brings us to, really. All Angela Merkel wants to do is follow it to its logical end and to keep the currency alive. Then we need to have a shared fiscal and budgetary policy. And anyway, the whole project was a socialist idea back in the 80s anyway, so we can't complain now. Libération is also having a look at this, and they say everything he says about foreign policy is he needs to be really, really careful because he's known for having that as his weak point. He hasn't travelled much. He doesn't have really a track record in foreign policy, and they reckon that he needs to be very careful what he says, especially because he's going to Germany this weekend to meet the German Socialist Party to try and make common cause with them. So he needs to be careful not to upset them.
Speaking of weak points, I can hardly believe this, but Dominique Strauss-Kahn in the papers again.
Again, this is the authorised autobiography of Dominique Strauss-Kahn that's coming out. So this is, as Le Parisien puts it, his version of what exactly happened in the Sofitel on the morning of May the 14th. Now, he's told the authorised biographer that he had a consensual sexual encounter with Nafissatou Diallo during those 5 minutes. He also talks about the accusations linking him to a prostitution ring, of course, based around the Carlton Hotel in the north of France, where he could be needing to speak to investigating magistrates quite soon. He says he might well have slept with some of the women involved, but he doesn't pay for sex, and we won't admit having done that. And he also suspects that his phone was tapped, and that's where the, of course, plot rumours come from, the idea that he may have been tapped. This was brought up by the New York Review of Books in a long article at the weekend, and Libération is also asking today, could Dominique Strauss-Kahn really have been the victim of a plot? And they reckon that actually he could. There's a lot of things that still need explaining.
Thanks very much, Elena, for that look at the French papers. Another look at our headlines now.